A movie that my friends love and asked me to review? Sounds interesting.
Put you in a white-collar, minimum security resort for a couple of months. You know they have conjugal visits there?
I might be showing her my O face. Oh.
They let you have sex with women?
They sure do.
Okay, I'll do it.
Office Space.
So Office Space is directed by Mike Judge, and it stars Ron Livingston, Jennifer Aniston, and many more. And Office Space tells the story of this guy named Peter who works at a tech company, and he hates his job. He just sits in a cubicle all day doing pretty much nothing, and he hates his life so much it's almost amazing. It's almost unbelievable at points. And he goes through this kind of spiritual journey with his friends, and they essentially just rebel against their boss in various ways. And overall, I liked Office Space. I thought it was fine. I thought it had some funny moments, but really didn't have a cohesive plot at all, and I felt like the performances were just not good. Now let's get into the performances a little bit. I think that Ron Livingston is pretty decent as Peter Gibbons, the main character, and I think that following him through his day-to-day, you really understand and sympathize with this guy, and you really get why he hates his job so much, because it is so extremely boring and mundane. And Jennifer Aniston in this movie I think is pretty good. I think there are moments that just don't really make sense with her. You're not really given enough time to see her mature, but that's really more on the director's plate than Jennifer Aniston's. I just think overall most of the performances outside of these two main characters were pretty average and didn't really do anything for me, especially moments with their boss played by Gary Cole. He just says these words in this weird order and it just doesn't really make sense. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be comical because it just really bothered me. Now the main problems I had with this movie were just the plot itself. I felt like the plot really doesn't go anywhere. There are so many moments where it's constantly redirecting itself and it doesn't really set itself up for a nice payoff at the end. It's just constantly doing new things, making you feel connected to different characters, but you really don't feel that connected to any of the characters except maybe Peter, because he's the only one that stays consistent throughout the whole movie. It opens up many different plot lines. There's a romantic aspect, there's a spiritual aspect, there's an aspect of him and his friends, there's a robbery heist aspect of this movie, there's this other character who feels like he's being pent up and being put in the closet, and there's just these characters don't really carry any weight to them because you're not given nearly enough time to understand any of their motivations. I just felt like the writing in this movie was extremely thin and none of the characters really made any sense to me. You really don't understand any of the motivations in this movie, including Peter's. There's a moment in this movie where the plot completely shifts and goes in this other new direction, and they never once touch on it again in the entire movie. It doesn't make any sense that this major plot point in the movie would not be touched on at all, except maybe one other time. Now this movie is a comedy movie, so that means the point of it is to be funny, and honestly it's just not that funny. There's many moments in this movie that I felt myself going, oh okay, this is supposed to be funny, they're doing this weird back and forth thing, and it just didn't work for me at all. The movie makes absolutely no use of its visual aspect, and it just relies all on dialogue, which is a big problem because the movie has extremely weak dialogue. There are a couple moments in this movie that are really funny. There's a moment where he's walking through his office and he's doing all these rambunctious things, and there's a really funny rap song playing in the background, and it makes a lot of sense and it really works in the movie's favor. But the movie doesn't really stick with a consistent tone. It keeps changing. It's very choppy. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it doesn't feel like one big cohesive product. And that's why the movie really didn't work for me. In the end, I think Office Space is an incredibly mediocre movie and really falls flat on almost everything it sets out to achieve. I think the characters are thin, the performances are relatively weak. I really didn't sympathize with anyone except for maybe Pete at a couple moments in the movie, and a lot of the comedy just falls flat for me. And that's why, in the end, I'm gonna give Office Space a 1 out of 4. Thanks guys, that's my review of Office Space. I hope you liked it. Hope you drop me a subscribe, drop me a like, whatever it is you do here on YouTube, and I'll see you next week.